Ever wonder like how companies manage all the stuff that happens behind the scenes to get like a product you ordered, how they manage to get it to you?
Yeah, it's a big process.
Or how do they keep track of, tons of customers and all their details and all that?
With a lot of moving parts.
Yeah. Well, today we are diving into the core of sales and distribution. We've got some great material that breaks down the foundational pieces that allow these businesses to handle their sales like well-oiled machines.
Absolutely. We've got a lot of great resources here.
Yeah.
Our goal is to extract those, like, really essential building blocks,
Right.
that make efficient sales operations possible.
Right.
And that starts with, well, a few things. How a company structures its sales activities in its systems, the vital information that it keeps on everybody that they interact with,
Right.
and then, of course, the products and services themselves, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's all about understanding how these fundamental elements all connect to each other.
So maybe we start with how a company organizes itself for sales.
Yeah, good place to start.
The guide highlights three key parts here. The sales organization, which is the legal entity that is responsible for the sales, the distribution channel,
Right.
which is basically how they get their offerings to you, like through a store or online.
Right, like direct or through a third-party reseller, all that.
Exactly. And then division, which is usually aligns with like their different product lines or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. Think about a company that sells both software and consulting services, for example.
Right.
Each of those could be a separate division, right?
Right.
And their software might be sold through, a direct online channel, as well as, partnerships with resellers.
Uh-huh.
Those would be different distribution channels.
Right.
But the sales organization would be the overarching legal entity
Right.
responsible for both.
Yeah.
So these three, the sales organization, the distribution channel, and the division, they together form what is called a sales area,
Okay.
which is a specific scope for sales activities.
Gotcha. So it's not just the like external facing parts of it.
Oh, absolutely not.
The guide also mentions internal teams like sales offices, sales groups, and then you also have like the logistics side
Right.
with like shipping points and loading points, right?
Right. And
It's this whole network.
it's
Yeah.
this whole like internal network of things that are happening too. And importantly, all of this has to connect with like the rest of the business.
Right. Yeah.
The guide points out the integration with accounting using things like company codes to track financials and materials management,
Uh-huh.
which handles inventory in plants and storage locations.
Right. Right.
It's like a fully integrated system.
Yeah. So with that structure as the framework, let's talk about who they are actually selling to.
Right. Yeah.
The guide places a lot of emphasis on like the business partners, right?
Yeah.
Especially customers, right? And their master record.
The customer master, right?
Yeah.
That's where all the really vital information about a customer is stored, right? The guide breaks it down into general data, which is like your basic contact information,
Right.
your company code data, which is relevant for accounting and payments and things like that,
Yeah.
and your sales area data,
Mm-hmm.
which is really specific to how, that company interacts with that particular customer in terms of sales and distribution.
Yeah, it's interesting how like the person placing the order isn't always like receiving it
Oh, right.
or paying for it, right?
Totally.
That's where those partner functions come in.
Yeah. Those like different roles.
Right.
The sold to party, the shipped to party, the payer,
Yeah. Yeah.
and the bill to party.
Like imagine I don't know, a parent ordering something online for their child
Right.
who is at college.
Right.
The parent is the sold to party.
Right.
The child is the shipped to party.
Exactly.
The parent's credit card is paying,
Right.
and the invoice is going to the parent's home address. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. Just splitting up all those different roles.
It's amazing.
So that's, one of the really key things that this guide points out.
Yeah.
Is that you've got all these different functions. That can get pretty complex,
Right.
The guide also mentions account groups, which help
Mhm.
to categorize customers and control what information is collected from each one.
Okay.
And then even how customer numbers are assigned.
Gotcha.
Whether that's internal or external numbering, there's a lot of different ways to do it.
So for customers that like only buy occasionally,
Yeah.
the guide introduces something called one-time customers,
Right.
also known as CPD accounts.
Yep.
It's like a way to like process their order without creating like this full permanent master record.
Right. It's like a lighter version, a shorter version.
Yeah.
If you're only going to do,
One or two
a
transactions.
couple transactions with them, why create a big complicated record?
Right. Right. Exactly. Now, what about the actual product itself?
Right.
The product or service? That's where products and services come in, right?
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
central to any sales process, obviously.
This is like the meat of what we're talking about here.
Right. Yeah.
The guide highlights things like material types, which categorize the products,
Uh-huh.
and the material master record.
Okay.
Just like with the customer master, you've got this material master. It holds a ton of information organized into different views, including specific sales views that are relevant to what we're talking about here.
Okay, so we've got like the organizational chart, we've got the details on who's buying,
Right.
and we've got the information on what is being sold, right?
Yeah.
How does all this come together to actually make a sale happen?
Well, the guide makes it clear that all of these foundational elements, the organizational structure, the customer and partner data, and the product data,
Yeah.
all of that enables the actual sales transactions,
Okay.
right? The sales orders, the deliveries, all of that.
Right.
Accurate and consistent master data across all these areas.
Right.
That's key for everything to run smoothly.
Yeah, it makes sense.
From getting the right price and shipping to the correct address
Yeah.
to sending out an accurate invoice. If this base isn't solid,
Right.
the whole sales process can really fall apart.
Yeah. So to really sum it up, understanding the company's sales structure, diligently managing that customer and partner information,
Yeah.
and having a clear handle on your products and services, those are
Absolutely.
those are the non-negotiable first steps.
Those are the make or break.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You can't have an effective sales operation without that.
Yeah.
And I think another thing that's really important to think about here is when you're thinking about all these fundamentals, these aren't just about processing transactions.
Right.
They're about providing the framework for understanding your customers.
Yeah.
They help you to manage your offerings effectively
Uh-huh.
and ultimately gain valuable insights into your business.
Okay.
Like, think about it. Clean, well-organized customer data
Right.
that can reveal trends and opportunities you might otherwise miss.
Absolutely.
It can really, really help you to understand your business in a deeper way.
Yeah.
So I guess to kind of wrap things up, I'm curious, what aspect of these like foundational elements strikes you as the most critical?
Oh, that's a good question.
Like what do businesses really need to get right from the start, in your opinion?
I think
If you had to pick one.
if I had to pick one, I would say that probably getting the customer data right is probably the most important, because if you don't have accurate customer data,
Right.
then nothing else matters.
You can't reach them.
You can't reach them. You don't know what they want.
You don't know who to sell to.
Yeah.
You're just shooting in the dark.
Exactly.
So yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I would agree with you. I think that's probably the most critical
Yeah.
to get right from the start.
Awesome.
Well, this has been a great dive into the core of sales and distribution.
It really has. We've covered a lot of ground today.
We have a lot of information packed in here, but hopefully it's been helpful
Very helpful.
for our listeners to get a good grasp of these foundational pieces.
Absolutely. And we'll leave you with that to think about. What is your most important foundational piece?
Yeah, that's a good question to ponder.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.